Welcome to Knife Reviews. Here's awesome Dada Hightower.
Welcome to Knife Reviews. I'm your host, Joshua Hightower. This is my partner, Evan Hightower.
Hi!
This week we're doing the Esee6. As always, we'll have 5 categories that we go over: chopping and batoning, cutting, feather sticking, spine scraping, and ferrule rod usage. The Esee6 is an overall length of 11.75 inches. It has a cutting edge length of 5.75 inches, 1095 high carbon steel, 55 to 57 HRC. It is in fact a full ting design. This has a pretty decent knot in it, and it went through it pretty well. And chopped batons right through the knot, no problem. So that baton through and cut my wedge pretty well. One of the things I always talk about is having edge integrity after you chop or baton to make sure that your blade has great enough integrity to be able to continue cutting and processing after you've gotten through the batoning process. No nicks or dings. Pretty heavy duty knife that put up with a lot of beating on it. So batoning so far, very happy with it. One of the things I wanted to point out is that it does have that contoured grip on the handle, which allows you to choke back and get a very safe and very strong grip on it to chop with it. But for chopping and batoning, pretty happy with it. I'm going to give it a 8 out of 10. It takes a little bit more power to chop, to swing that real heavy blade, and I think that the handle feels heavier than the blade itself does, and what that means is that it's a little off balance, so you're having to concentrate a little bit more when you're doing your chopping motion, which over time could cause a little bit of fatigue. So 8 out of 10, pretty decent score for chopping and batoning. The next category that we're going to go into is cutting. Ideally, you'd like to be able to create a spindle, and being able to create a spindle basically gives you the idea or the knowledge that your knife can do all the cutting tasks that you would need it to do. What I have found though is that as I'm cutting, I can feel the weight distribution being way back into the handle and not nearly enough up into the blade. What that's creating is back pressure, which means that you're having to push into it, into the blade a lot more than you would like. That causes an off balance, and already my forearms are getting a little bit weak from it. So I am finding that it's not cutting the rope as cleanly as I would like. When you're starting to do the hard work cuts, the processing, creating tender, that's where the weight distribution balance problem comes into play. I'm going to have to give this a 6 out of 10 on cutting. The next activity that we're going to go into is feather sticking. So it's actually feather sticking much better than it did on cutting. So the blade is actually very sharp right out of the box, so it's feather sticking quite well. You're going to be able to catch fire with that, and I'm actually quite pleased with how it's feather sticking, getting a little bit of curl in there. So in stark contrast, and I very much mean that, in stark contrast to cutting, it actually shines pretty well in feather sticking. And somebody that has much greater skill in feather sticking than I do is going to tell you that this does a very good job in feather sticking. The one overarching theme out of all of these categories that I found so far is that the handle is very thick, and I should say wide, where that's thickness and this the width. It's causing the weight of the blade to be shifted back, and as you can see that it's just shifting way back, so it's causing a lot of stress on my forearms. And we've been out here for about 45 minutes now. You'll see about 10 minutes of the overall cutting. It's actually causing me to get fatigued pretty quickly, but I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10 on feather sticking. Evan's getting pretty tired, right? So we're going to get into our next category right away, which will be spine scraping. I can tell you right off the bat, I don't believe it's going to do very well. I can feel a smoothness, and that's absolutely because of this black, almost powder coat on it. But we'll give it a try and see how it does. Watch out, bud. as you all know, cedar has one of the best barks to process for making a fire. If a knife can't get cedar bark to shave off, it's not a good knife. So this is not a great indication of how it will do. A little bit better indication will be if we can get some to scrape off of a stick.
It's not working, but that's stick. I think you lost that.
If you've ever heard in an exercise in futility, that is exactly what scraping wood with this knife is. And hopefully you can see that on there. All I'm doing is just transferring the black coating from the knife onto the stick. Pine scraping, I give it a big fat 1. The last category that we're going to get into is ferro rod usage. And regrettably, I can tell you right off the bat, because of that smoothness from that coating that's on there, it is not going to scrape a ferro rod. And I think everybody's lucky, because this is going to be a short review. 0 on ferro rod usage. So for the Esee6, and this would be the same with the Esee3, basically the same knife with different lengths, thus the names. It's actually, there are extenuating circumstances for the low grade that I've given it. It's a very decent knife for a very good price point. I actually got this for $110 on Amazon. You can find other places, maybe a little bit higher, anywhere from the $90 range to the $120 range. You can modify this to mitigate all of the spine scraping and ferro rod usage downgrades that I've given it. So in the end, are you willing to do the modifications? Are you willing to put in the work for the knife? It's all up to you and what you want to do. Evan Hightower.
Evan Hightower.
And Dad Hightower. We really appreciate you being here on Knife Reviews. Once again, tune in next week for the infamous BK2. We'll have the review on that. You can contact us on YouTube and Facebook at Knife Reviews. Our email address is knives@knifereviews.us. We would really appreciate you subscribing to our channel, watching all the other videos, giving us input from my family to yours. Have a wonderful day and God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Do widzenia.
Do widzenia.